to this webinar, which is the latest in a series of webinars the Open Group is bringing you this year. Today's event is being brought to us by Biz Design, which is a very active member of the Open Group, and our speaker today is Remco Blom. Before I go over to Remco, I'd just like to go over a few housekeeping issues just to keep the event moving forward smoothly. First of all, with regards to questions, we encourage you to ask questions. This is one of the main objectives of bringing these events to you. The best way to submit a question is to write it into the text QA facility. If you do write a question in there, can I ask you to address it to all participants? That one gets to see the questions that are being submitted. And our intention is to try and answer as many questions as we possibly can at the end of the event. This event is also being fully recorded, so if for any reason you have to leave early, or if you experience any local technical difficulties, and I know sometimes the audio can be occasionally a bit patchy, full recording will be available from tomorrow, and everyone that is registered for this event will get an email that contains the URL where you can access that record. So Remco, if you're happy, can I ask you to start your presentation?
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon, and thanks to the whole of the Open Group for organizing this event. I will relay the presentation on business model innovation for architects and their stakeholders. We only have 1 hour, so all slides are available through our site, bizdesign.com, where I wrote a small blog, and you can download some other information on this subject as well. And the recording, as mentioned by Simon, will be made available through the Open Group WebEx channel. The agenda is a short introduction on BizDesign and myself, and then we want to introducing business models as a concept that you can use in creating in the overall vision of the organization, to get an in where the organization is today, and that you can get better insight in how to create change in your organization. Innovation is an important aspect of business models, and also the application of it in practice. I will present some applications of the business model canvas to you. Finally, we will present an integrated approach on how to integrate the business model canvas with TOGAF and Archimate. So BizDesign, we originate from a background in business process modeling, enterprise architecture, and in the last 2 years we created a practice on business model innovation. Of course, requirements is an important aspect to as being glue between all these different subjects and these different approaches. Consulting, software tooling, training, and best practices are important parts of our approach. Tools on business model canvas, on enterprise architecture, referring to TOGAF, Archimate, also BIM and Lean are important aspects. Training on different levels. We have about 130 employees around the globe. In North America, we have an office in Toronto. I am based in the Netherlands, where currently the weather is really bad. Even we don't have a storm, contrary to where Simon is based in the UK. And we have offices around Europe, as well as many partners that serve the Southern Americans and Australia. Remco Blom, I have a background in business, and from there entered the focus of business process management, site in Archimate and TOGAF, and also delivered trainings on these subjects. My time I spent with customers, dealing with the setting up enterprise architecture capabilities, doing innovation work, and connecting these different fields. So I really see it as my that's the big challenge in my work, is to bridge all these different islands, so to speak, and to integrate them. I'm to Yvonne, and together we are the proud parents of my beautiful daughter Sterre, who's already taking her steps in the digital world, as you see. Google on a plane ticket to New York, you get the word cheap about 20 times in your screen. If you Google on the word cheap, again you get all sorts of information on airline tickets. First of all, you can think that Google understands that I'm searching for an airline ticket and therefore putting this information on top. But I also think that these two concepts, being cheap and airline tickets, are very connected, and that makes sense. Why are people willing to pay much for a cup of coffee, and so for an airline ticket, because the underlying costs is very different between these two different products. Both you can buy for $5 these days. So many architects and many people in the field of process management and modeling are oriented on the bottom arrow, optimizing implementation and operations, do the things right. But these EA practices, as well as some of these practices where business analysts are in, are more involved in answering questions that regard the top arrow. Are we doing the right things? And questions involve the creation and innovation of business models. One line, show me the money. But if you are in a for-profit environment, maybe it's more about effects and so something that's less tangible than money. Is think a business model urgent? That very much depends on your business. So in media these days, I think that is very urgent. The number of subscribers to newspapers is declining really fast, as well as the market, which is moving to the web, as well as to television more and more. So if you are in news media, you really have a problem and desperately need to find a new business model. And the silver bullet is not yet there. But if you're in oil and gas, I don't know, maybe it's not that urgent. As it is with most important things. The long wait with putting attention to important things, there will be a moment when they will also be urgent for you. So take a look at the 20 biggest bankruptcies in the world ever. They are shown or reflected here as boats. I think that's interesting. So the bigger the boat, the harder it is to steer the boat, maybe. On the left you see a timeline, and there you see that in the 17 of the 20 biggest bankruptcies were in the last 10 years. What does this tell us? Okay, you think maybe organizations get bigger, and the bigger the organization, the harder it is to steer them. But another thing you might read from this is that life cycles of business models become shorter. And we see sorts of organizations. The biggest is Lehman Brothers, but we also see car companies, and we see UAL, and we see insurance and industry. So in different markets. Which of these existed 10 years ago? Just started. It has started, but the rest didn't exist. So then it's just it's really changed the marketplace out there. So I think that because of this change, the world's changing fast, and you have to invest in business models. And here in Europe we have the euro, and maybe in 10 years we don't euro anymore, depending on what the Greeks are doing. So it's changing, and I think also for you as an architect, you have to be aware of these changes, and I think you can join questions on these changes. And on this concept is called VUCA. It comes from the world of defense. It states that volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity are part of this new normal. So it's not the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but those that are most responsive to change. Okay, I knew that. Maybe I knew that product innovation was the most important differentiator in the past. Today, your business model is more important. So you can more money, an inferior product, if you have a better business model. A business model subject is really big on the web. So I made this slide hour ago, and I found 73,000 hits on Amazon. 2 weeks ago it was 322,000. So they also changed their search algorithm. But at the very top of the hit list on Amazon is Business Model Generation by Alexander Osterwalder and Yves Pigneur. And this is the de facto standard for business models. But there's more to be found. Seeing the white space, rebuilding the business model from Harvard Business Review. Some are taking a more functional approach to business models, but we are a fan of Osterwalder's approach, where a business model consists of 9 elements, 9 building blocks. explain how an organization creates value and how it delivers this value to market and how it captures this value. So we take as the definition for a business model. The rush how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. Today you do that in a certain way, and you can think of certain strong parts and the weaker parts of your business model, and can consider if your business model will be still valid today and will be valid in the coming 10 years. It's about the product alone. Can go wrong, or what might go wrong when employees and managers in your organization are aware of the current business model. Many things can go wrong. If they're not aware of how an organization creates value, what is important to customers to actually capture that value, where you make the money, that is really important that people understand that. And if they don't, making might go the wrong way. And if they understand the direction of the organization, then the information. So therefore, it's very important that somebody in the organization tries to put paper and make that explicit. This model really helps to bring people together. So if you ask someone with a financial perspective on what is the business model of your organization, they will probably come up with explaining you on where the money goes in and where the money goes out. And this is not wrong, but it's just a part of the business model. Where if you talk to marketing people, they will tell you about customer segments and about certain channels that they use to these customers. Where architects typically have a focus on process and applications, which are more on the structure side of the business model. So everybody has a view on the business model, and everybody has a partial view. And a business model canvas integrates these different views, so that you compare apples and oranges and say, oh, this is a retailer and this is an airline. They are very different. Or if you want to do merger acquisition, you can see where there are possibilities for synergies and where you value to someone else's business model. Very interesting for change. So where you say that maybe the market sees me as an apple today, but I want to be seen as an orange. You can use a business model approach to change your organization. The first part of a business model is the market segments. Or you go for mass market, niche markets, maybe two-sided business models. And with selecting your market, you select your customers. So when Nintendo entered the market with the Wii, they were intentionally not aimed for the hardcore gamers, because this market was already taken by Sony with their PlayStation and Microsoft with their Xbox. And they aimed for your technology regarding graphics. So they intentionally aimed for families and women, and therefore create their own market and their own competition. You should consider value proposition. So what is it that you bring to the market? And it's not really the product that we are interested in from a business model perspective. We are interested in reasons why people are buying the product. So are they buying it for performance improvement, for risk reduction, because it's very cheap? The reason to buy it, and that is really what distinguishes you from your competitors. The reasons for product. Then you consider how is this product or service is brought to the marketplace. Do we have sales force? Do we have stores? Are these our own stores or third-party stores? Or do we have a website? So where we could think of, simple product combination matrices. These days, you should consider product phase, market, channel combinations. So in different phases of the buying journey of a customer, we intentionally aim for different channels, because we understand people are not coming to the store and buy a television these days. They gather information on the web beforehand. They talk about their television usage experiences on fora. So you have to be present at different channels, and that also counts for not-for-profit organizations. And a lot of channel selection has to do with the relationship that you aim for having with your customer. Personal assistant, or do you aim for self-service? If you ever somebody working for Skype, probably not, because they 100% aim self-service, like co-creation. For the GiveGap, which is a UK telco, they help desk everybody. If you have a question, you go to their website and someone answers your question. An other customer from GiveGaff answers your question regarding your invoice, for instance. Why do people do that? They have some sort of brand experience with GiveGaff, or that's the reason why it's really cheap. But the number of contributors on their forum, this is the top 5% contributors. They are working for the incentive of status on the forum. So they get likes and kudos. This is really cheap for GiveGaff. This is great. So we value you to customers through channels, building a certain relationship, and we get something back for that. This is our revenue stream. Do we get sales? Do we send invoices over certain usage? Do we have licensing or advertising? So if you go to the Walmart, you pay product plus margin. You pay. But if you go to fitness, typically you have a subscription, and maybe don't even want you to come. You pay anyway, and then you can drive to the gym, take the escalator, and spend in the gym. Okay, value proposition. The market, you get something back for it. But how do you create this value? First of all, you have key activities: production, R&D, knowledge sharing, marketing. This is where the real hard work is being done. So you typically process architecture. The key elements of the process architecture in creating value for the customer. This is what we would like to see in a business model campus. Key resources: physical resources, human resources, maybe financial resources if you are in the bank. Infrastructural resources, intellectual resources regarding patents, for instance, where Apple and Samsung are fighting each other for in court these days. But this is really an important aspect and an important part of their value proposition that they want to protect. Key partners then. The concept that you can do it all by yourself, probably not. So you need to have partners, innovation partners, key suppliers. So Nespresso would not work without an espresso machines, and they intentionally select groups and not Philips or Sony. Then on this side of the canvas, you make costs on this side of your business model. You can consider being cost-driven or value-driven. Whether you go for variable costs or economy of scale, what is important? Nobody flies to the Burj Al Arab with EasyJet. First of all, because EasyJet doesn't fly to Dubai, but also because their business models do not fit very well. The Arab 7-star hotel, it's very much value-oriented. Everything you pay an enormous amount of money for the room, but then the rest is free. Where EasyJet, you pay nothing, you get nothing, and then you fly, and then you pay a few bucks for a cup of coffee, and you pay extra for dragging a suitcase. These are the 9 boxes of a business model. Taking the market perspective on the right, with the financial perspective on the bottom, with the organization perspective on the left. And that is a very powerful and simple tool to use in your work. You can use sticky notes, so you can make sketches. You can describe current business models, as well as you can design new or alternative business models. Skysens at their start was aiming for travelers and small, medium-sized businesses. Anybody who contacts abroad, they provide free and international phone calls, voice video conferencing. But the real value is that you be connected. Self-service, web, mobile, it's all for free, but you pay with Skype out. This is called the freemium pattern. So the people that call to landlines through Skype pay. Key are software development, customer service. For developers, they have some VoIP infrastructure. They collaborate with local telcos and device producers, and of course with providers. Otherwise, the money would not come in. The salary and infrastructure. You've never heard of Skype. You have no clue. You get an understanding of what this business is and what they aim for. Free business model. You can make huge amounts of money with it. Microsoft bought it for $8.5 billion for a service that is free. That is enormous. So if you have a business model, maybe you should consider deliver service for free and then try to sell the company. This is also interesting for not-for-profit organizations. So I mentioned earlier, it's not about show me the money, it's also about show me the effect. So for instance, hospitals or public service organizations also deliver value. Challenges then are is typically the people that are using the service are not those that are paying for the service. And costs and revenues can be partly qualitative. So you have revenue streams and benefits. And typically you build two circles. You have a donor, he pays maybe the government, paying the social security service, implementing some political goals, and they pay for that. And then the provided by the social security is going to civilians, and they service for free. And almost in any business model where the user is not the one that is paying for it, you build two circles on the right side. Very nice, 9 boxes in a business model canvas. How can you use this in practice? I wrote a blog on 7 applications of the business model canvas. You can find our business design blog, and I want to take you through these 7 applications. First, use it in a startup. So you think you have the best idea in the world, or it's pretty good. You want to make a more design. This will set direction for the organization, your department, or your product. So it's not just for startups, because this will also count for new projects, for instance. You can position yourself in the value chain, for instance, also creating the business models of your supplier and your customer. Secondly, what fancy slides from the boardroom really mean for us? So there's a group of people making a strategy, the impact of it. It really works great if you have a business model canvas. You take the most important themes from the strategy and plot them on top of the business model, so that where is the impact. All teams focus on one element. Maybe the strategy is either very focused or maybe it's not complete. You can have all sorts of discussion on that, and you can use it as a starting point for implementation roadmaps. Okay, we have a strategy, but we new ways to do business. We need to innovate. What you can do is that you can use the business model canvas as a starting point for your innovation, taking the epicenter approach, so that you think of the canvas except from one box. And see, can we design a new business model built on just these elements? You can take inspiration from different branches or your own branch, thinking from great organizations. What are they doing so good? So you can take tactics and patterns from existing organizations and apply that on your existing business model. We have a lot of projects, but we cannot do them all at once. What is most important, or what sequence makes sense? So you also plot your project portfolio on top of your business model canvas. Especially interesting in combination with this application of the canvas. You also plot the strategy, so you can synchronize the projects with the strategy in a graphical way. So everybody uses the same background from the canvas. Of course, all required architecture views and process models, no using them. There is an interesting application for architects. So if you want to get more traction on the business side, you can relate your architectures to the business model. And then your business model as a front end, and then down into more detailed enterprise architecture and process models, and relate the people on this journey from a level business model down to enterprise architecture. Focusing on doing the things right is great, but we need to also think about, are we actually doing the right thing? So in many lean initiatives, it's about cost cutting and doing things smarter. I think it's important to start with the customer and the value. What is it actually that we deliver to our customers, and how we design that? That's your starting point, and then you improve processes on top of that notion. Now, we find ourselves discussing over the same things over and over again. There's something to structure the discussion. I think that is the business model canvas. Those people keep talking about, should we go for stores, or should we go for our own stores, or should we go for flag stores, or should we go for third-party stores? That discussion has a lot with your customer relations. So it's a discussion, and you can just use it for yourself and just sketch a business model during a discussion. discussion and give some structure to a discussion. That really helps. There's an way of working where you typically, in business innovation, you start with the strategy. That should already be there, or you help to create a strategy, and you mobilize the right people. Typically, just under C-level people is the right level to get into the room to create an understanding of the current business model, design alternative business models, and then move into implementation phase where enterprise architecture plays an important role. I think that management of business models, especially if you are in a large organization, is interesting. Because large organizations typically have more than one business model, which are overlapping, and then you can use the business model approach also for finding synergies. Mentioned earlier, a business model canvas can be a very good starting point for innovation in this epicentric approach, where you, for instance, the resource-driven approach, where the main question is how can we reuse existing resources in the creation of new value. Or you offer-driven approach, stating that we have a certain offering which is doing really well in the marketplace. Can we also deliver this offering to new markets? Or are there alternative ways to create this offer? Or cost-driven. We have a bunch of customers. Can we help them with other challenges than those that we are helping them with today? All these questions can be asked, can be started from a canvas, and patterns and inspirations from other organizations help you to get new insights and new inspiration. So you strategized, you mobilized, you got an understanding of the current business model, and you designed, based on epicentric approach, new business models, and you select the one that is going to do it for you. Many is Post-its, typically the instrument of use. Canvas will do the job. I think not. There is a thing as a successful business model, but implementation. And you go to the OV store. I think it doesn't exist anymore. But it's on a canvas with post-it notes. It looks similar and maybe even the same as the App Store of Apple, but the implementation is totally different. So on a business model design, they look very similar, but the success is very different, and that has to be the implementation of the brand, the implementation of the design of the actual partners that are part of the App Store. Maybe first mover advantage, or in Apple's case, second mover advantages, where they can reuse existing and learn from others. So at first, innovation, oh great, the world is changing, we need to do it differently, and we come up with all sorts of great ideas. I like that. Top of business model mountain, and then execution start, and it's made the top. You're not even 10% of your work, of your initiatives. Of the business model, we have the 4 E's of engagement, egos, high energy, and excitement. And over the hill, we find the 4 B's of bureaucracy, bosses, budgets, and all sorts of biases throughout the organization. Then we fail. So it's not really hard to find a great idea and come up with a great innovation. But there is no innovation without implementation. So you as an architect can play an important role in implementing business models. This canvas approach will suit you because creativity and structure, that is part of your job as an architect as well. Strategy implementation is what you are in for in the world. In communication are important challenges, and that is really something that the business model canvas helps you with. So therefore, I think it's typically something that is helpful for you, and maybe you can think of multiple other reasons why this business model approach helps you. It's universal enough for strategy people that thinks in terms of blue ocean strategy, 5 forces model, that sort of tools. And it's exact enough for process and IT people, so that you can take the next step towards requirement specification, the creation of enterprise architecture principles, that sort of stuff. So it's really as an in-between model. So the strategy sets the context and requirements for your business model, and then the business model sets context and requirements for implementation. In strategy, we typically talk in terms of business blue ocean strategies, 5 forces, and SWOT. And probably in your organization there are party game and some other strategy models. And what is stated in the strategy level sets context and requirements for your business model that you have to understand design. You can do some sort of testing, stress testing for in what future states your model will perform best, and elements of the model are more robust than other elements. And of a roadmap for implementing the model. Of course, that has a lot to do with the implementation layer. We're top, and this is critical in every business model implementation. Marketing and sales is the starting point. So we architects might think that processes and applications great, but get connection with the market and getting a real understanding if customers are willing to pay for it, and if they how much they pay and how often they will buy it. That sort of information is critical. So therefore, I emphasize that this is really an important starting point, but also enterprise architecture and information planning, and maybe more detailed stuff, or stuff that is more on a project level as processes and business analysis. Also, relations with business models. This is our way of thinking, and we describe this approach in the white paper that is to download from our website for free. And we say the current world where people work, and like to understand that by modeling it under step 1. And we think, okay, we understand the current way of working and the current architecture. We try to understand the current business model as is. Then we like to change that, so we design alternative business models, typically more than one. And we select then one combination of business models that we think is the to-be business model for the future. And we design the target architecture based on these to-be business models. We understand the difference because typically it's the same architecture supporting different business models. So we do gap analysis and we build a roadmap, as you know from TOGAF, the VNF. Finally, there will change where we implement the new architecture through. Typically, these projects have to do the migration, going from current way of working towards the new way of working. These steps might be your road as an architect in your need to change. First, you baseline architecture. Then you model and understand the current business model. As I mentioned, typical with workshops, it will be very hard to get them in the room statements on post-it notes. So it's typically the level just under that will join your workshop. You want to design alternative business models and select them. You use the existing business strategy as well as inspiration from other business models to these alternatives, and you select on the impact on the baseline architecture. So you want some notion already on what is the impact of this new business model on the existing architecture. But of course also stuff like market potential and risk will be relevant in your choice. Then you design target architecture, where actually the business model is the vision. So in terms, there's VA for architecture vision, and then a business model can be a very helpful tool to sketch and to get a grip on what actually is the vision that is in the organization. You do principles from your business model and follow TOGAF, going from target business architecture to target information systems architecture to target technology architecture. You design a roadmap for change, and there you follow the steps in TOGAF, E, and F. Create a detailed migration plan. Then this model can be used as a reference in communication with business stakeholders and with technology stakeholders, also in projects, getting an understanding of what it really is that you have to do as a project. then the project, that is where the real change is happening in the organization. This is explained in more detail in the white paper as mentioned. And Osterwalder states in his book that enterprise architecture is a very interesting and a very important tool for enterprise for business model implementation. And he writes that there are 3 layers underneath the business model: a business layer, an application layer, and a technology layer. And very similar to Archimate, where there is a business layer, an application layer, and a technology layer. And of course, very similar to other architectural approaches that follow that same line. But what about motivation, for instance? So Archimate, we think in terms of behavior, structure, and information, but also motivation. Why are we actually doing it? What are our goals? What are our requirements? What are our principles? Very interesting aspect there that clearly refers back to the business model. You are an architect, and you, TOGAF, you are on enterprise level, the strategic architecture. And the business model is input for your architecture, and is a very helpful tool in phase for architecture visioning. Organizations where also business models are created for departments. So the department should consider what is it that they contribute to their own environment, internal the organization. Who are their internal customers? How are serving them? So then you can also put the business model before the architecture. You can, as referred to in the example of lean projects, you can use the business model canvas to understand your own project environment. So even in as a front end or indication of a vision or a solution architecture, a business model canvas can be, maybe not in this form, but parts of it can be very relevant in that case as well. But most cool would be to apply it between strategy and enterprise architecture at a strategic level. Then in the business model canvas is applied with sticky notes because it's very creative. It's very easy because sticky notes are in every office building, and you can transfer sticky notes from one box to another and take them up, take them out, put them on top of each other. So it's very easy to use. But steps towards implementation, more formal modeling enables your analysis and communication, and also collaboration in teams. And then so the integration with Archimate as an enterprise architecture modeling language becomes an option. A real tool to model your business model. You would probably work faster because it's all on platform, also with teams. You can use existing patterns. You have control mechanisms. Navigation layering, you can merge models. And you want to set that relation to EA and to BPM, so it's more integrated with existing modeling efforts. So for instance, you have the business model canvas for Nextpresso. It's, a typical organization selling these coffee cups. Means not make a lot on machines, but a lot on the cups. And this is work. And I say, what we are going to do is we are adding, we are not selling Nextpresso, sorry. We are selling Nextpresso also to the offices. So all users and companies become customers of ours. So we have this idea. By adding new elements to the canvas, we can do analysis, showing the differences between the two canvases. The green stuff is new. We do but also we are able to generate snow-based heat maps where we are able to show the differences between the business model elements and their behavior in different future state scenarios. Of course, some work to be done in between, so you have to consider how these elements will perform, and then we can create these heat maps. So selections, and it's not that you are only looking for, oh, this is the very green on the right, so that is the future state of preference, so that we can steer towards it. But you also see that, for instance, here there are elements that in one side of the scenario are performing really well, and then if scenario falls the other way, then it goes really bad. So there's the flip coin. There are elements that are performing bad in both cases. So this is a risk. So we use these heat maps for risk analysis. You can generate alternative views on a business model, because the canvas itself is great, and people will start to become enthusiastic about it, and they get a common understanding. But if you want to do some analysis on white spots and overlap, then landscape view. For instance, on the bottom, you see a channel landscape where we see that the different products or different value propositions provided by Nextpresso are brought to the different customer segments through the different channels. We can show a canvas, but here you see it instantly, the relation. And notice that architects or more analysis focus also like these alternative views. Then you derive from your business model and principles. So in that this is very important, then we should, if we have a user club, customer data should be stored centrally. It cannot be true that every Nespresso store has its own customer data. That will not work in the business model design from so. We clients using the channel of their choice. This really is a business choice, but also a principle that has a lot of design implementation further downstream. Also principles regarding same work is being done by the same process or equivalent processes. So you derive from your business model that was okay found and also analyzed, and then we say, yes, we are going to implement this one. The next then is to design or principle that will help you to create your enterprise architecture. The design of your enterprise architecture at the business, application, and technology level. The Open Group Standard Modeling Language Archimate comes in play very handy. It bridges the gap from free format strategy pictures to technology diagrams, and I think also the business model helps you in that to an extent. Makes EA understandable or tangible throughout the organization, and it helps you to integrate different models. It's on a fairly cool level, so not as detailed as you, for instance, UML or BPMN. So it connects really well to the business model canvas. We have business elements, and of course these are typically ones that are integrated with the canvas, and then you can down into the application layer, showing application structure in terms of components, but also the different services that are provided through the processes, as well as different data to be used. And applications are supported by your technology layer, where you have infrastructure services, files, as we call artifacts, as well as nodes, networks, and devices. So based on what is considered to be key activities in the business model canvas, you can drill down into your architecture and stating that, okay, if this process is critical, then these applications are critical, then we should invest in this infrastructure. That sort of analysis you would like to make as an architect. So therefore, we are able to your future state or your target business model into a very high level target architecture model in terms of Archimate. There, in terms of having a complete architecture, because there is a lot underneath the business layer of an architecture, but a starting point that helps you to always be able to refer back to the original business model canvas. Therefore, it's very powerful. Everything can be captured in terms of business elements from the meta model of Archimate. So therefore, on top of the Archimate picture on the right, you also see goals, requirements, and principles, because we had derived them already from the business model. So it's not just processes, actors, values, channels, collaborations, that sort of stuff, but also goals and principles should be derived. And then this is the front end for the models that you are already creating. The concept, product market views, maybe revenue heat maps, or typical architecture views, a high-level process architecture, an application view, improvement views for purposes around lean, for instance, diagrams. So all these different views that you are already creating actually contain elements that are also part of a business model. And when you start off with the business model, and people are accepting that model and maybe even contributed to the creation of this target business model, then they are much more willing to follow you downstream towards models that are more in the detailed world of enterprise architecture. So this is also explained in various blogs and white papers, and we really look forward to helping you, as we do with other companies, with our certified tools in the field of Archimate. TOGAF also have integrated the big model canvas on top of that. We do workshops, and I really advise you to take a workshop approach in the understanding and design phase, but take a more actual approach in the implementation phase, where we help several organizations to bridge that gap from strategy, business models, doing impact analysis, down to implementation with enterprise architecture. So workshops towards implementation, more orientation on the architecture and analysis. Then you can work in an integrated way, going from a business model language, having the business model canvas, as a language for enterprise architecture, and maybe BPMN as the language for business process modeling. Analysis on your business model canvas, creating all sorts of views and SWOT analysis, do gap analysis in your enterprise architecture, and real performance analysis on your processes, real simulation. We have in the field of business models, taking a step-by-step approach, going from modelization and strategy to understand design and implementation, then taking the implementation with enterprise architecture, following the TOGAF steps and methods in the field of BPM. We support with the process flower, where you take processes as a central concept, use that for application design, as well as for risk management and internal control purposes and quality control. You need tools on these different layers. We have the business architect as the central tool for architecture, but on top of we also have the business model canvas tool, real integrated with architect, and then we have business designer for the more detailed implementation modeling. In implementation, you should consider working your way from business models to programs. Then the programs are the starting point for your TOGAF journey that ends with a set of projects. You will select the projects and you will govern them, and taking a more design approach in the field of processes as well as software design in the projects. You have no success until you have reached the right bottom. Real change is made. So real change in the way of working of people, or in your landscape, cutting real cost, or finding the new customer buying your new value proposition. Until you haven't reached that, it's all design, it's all hypothesis. So I advise you to take the business model approach as agile as possible, all down to the right button. So you don't need all these different in-between steps. Don't do it. But if you are relatively complex organization, these steps helps you to take a very controlled approach in design and implementation. With trainings and workshop series, going from one-day innovation training to trainings where we also relation that it has with TOGAF and Archimate, so in more detailed environments. Of course, we have the accredited courses on TOGAF and Archimate that we are all integrating with part of the business model campus, showing you that relations and that they are important to manage and to control. So today is the first step towards becoming a business model innovation champion, going from level 0 approaches 1, because now you understand the campus, you know what it can mean for architects. You're challenged to move to level 2, where you start to understand relations between the different boxes in the business model campus. On journey to level 3, where business model innovation is really becoming a part of the way you do business in your organization. And you are agile and will not become the woolly mammoths of your market. You enjoyed this presentation, and I would really encourage you to go to our website. Sorry about that. That was a bit rapid. To download a slide deck, to download a paper that is called Business Models, Aligning Business Strategy with Enterprise Architecture. Down to the presented modeling parts more deep. There's software to be found on just sketching your own business models and setting out relations to principles and implementation models in Archimate. There's a case to be found as well as the quick reference, and I think you will probably like that with some example business models in there as well. If you webinar, please ask colleagues and others that are interested to view the recording. If you have any suggestions, feel free to send me an email or to connect me through LinkedIn or Twitter. I would thank the Open Group for organizing this webinar, and then there's time left for questions as well. Thank you very much.
Remco, many thanks for that presentation. Yeah, just before we get on to the questions, just to reiterate what Remco's explained. Never one, the URL where you can download your slide decks, because we've had quite a few requests of how we might better get out those slides. And also we'll be getting an email that will have the URL where you can access the full recording of this event, which can be back or downloaded, and that should be out tomorrow. So, but if you have problems, feel free to send me an email, and I can assist you with getting hold of the slides or the recording. So, okay, we have a few questions. I'd like to start off with 2 questions from David. He asked, what are deliverables on a baseline architecture? And then he goes to ask, how do you recommend a structure? How do you recommend structuring a baseline architecture?
Okay, I think it's a very good question, and I can do a whole webinar on that subject more than an hour as well. So to keep it, the Open Group architecture framework TOGAF will give you some good guidance on that. There is a set of models or views that is maintained by the enterprise architecture group in your organization. There is a capability model or a high-level business function model. That is something that every organization should have. Of course, an organization chart or some insight in different roles and actors organization, you should have that. Insight in product portfolio, necessary as a business architect. And in the field of applications, as a brand, you should understand your existing application landscape. List or a diagram of all applications plus their flows. I think you need that. As a data model, and finally, insight in your technical landscape, also necessary, but depend on how much that is outsourced and how much of that is in your own data centers. So getting behavioral views as well as structure views on the levels of business, application, technology is a basis. To present to whom is a different question. So you should consider what are stakeholders for these different views. So where applications and technology views typically have more technology and design-oriented people as audience. The more oriented views typically have less technical audience. So therefore, typically the audience is especially helped with reference to business models as well. I think that answers the first part of the question. What was the second part again, Simon?
Okay, just go back and find it, Remco. Give me a minute. So the second part of the question is, how do you recommend to structure the domain architecture?
So I showed a slide where you have enterprise architecture at a strategic level, and you have segment architectures or domain architectures. And a challenge in federated environments is to read these different levels of architecture, and the domain where you are in, whether what kind of business domain, the structure typically follows the same lines, where you have business layer, the application, as well as the technology layer. And really important is to show and really make explicit how that relates to the more strategic architecture. And because in environments, typically the domains have a lot of freedom in making their own design decisions. But of course, enterprise or strategic architecture team also have an agenda towards integration and synergies. So the structure typically is the same, but there are some explicit challenges in structuring your repository, which again is something different than structuring your views. But it's a complex question to give one answer to that, but I hope this helps you a bit.
Okay, so a question here from Solomon asking, for companies that are in startup and don't have a business strategy, how does the business architect approach such customers using the business model?
Yeah, that is great. I wish I had more of these startups as customers, because then you really have a greenfield, no legacy and no all sorts of cultural aspects to overcome. So therefore, I think that the business model campus is a great approach to get this idea. So typically, the startup is an enthusiast guy with a great idea to get idea on paper and say, okay, what is this idea? To understand what the real value that you're going to bring to the marketplace. You're going to make money from it. But also important and interesting for startup organizations is to create the business model campus of your customers if you're in a business-to-business market, so that you understand how your value proposition is contributing to the value that your intended customers are bringing to their marketplace. And it will really help you to set a good pricing strategy, contrary to just cost plus margin, because that's a very defensive price strategy, I think. Yeah, I wish I had more startups, and I wish the guy the question all the best in applying the business model campus there. Also, the more detailed views come after the business model then. So if you have the business model in place, just follow the same line. Derive principles, these processes and application landscape based on that, and then move into project status.
Okay, just a follow-on question from Solomon. He's asking, are there templates or guidelines that a business architect can use to let the customer define their business strategy?
Yes, there are some, and they are to be found in many strategy books. I actually go for either the some 5 forces analysis kind of stuff in the analysis phase, but a stream map by Kaplan and Norton is something that could be really useful for defining a strategy all the way into implementation, giving you fair guidelines and relates also to the business model campus. Strategy map can be a way to go, and I know also other vendors and consultancy organizations having their own templates. So there's a lot to be found on that, but also a lot to debate on that, because every template has its pros and cons, obviously.
Okay, an interesting question here from Saqib, asking, in my opinion, understanding the current model should be the first step, and based on the weaknesses, the strategy should be developed. He's asked, why is the strategy being developed first instead of understanding the current state? What's your opinion? Okay.
I think he's right. and I wish that all organizations would follow that line. Many will make some sort of SWOT analysis also as part of their strategy phase. What I see in the real world out there is that in many cases strategy is there, and how to create it. They do it with a consultancy firm. They have no ideas. They will probably make some sort of SWOT of 5 forces, and in the end, it's there. And you are not able as an architect yet. So then you approach taking up the strategy and see what the impact is on the current model. But I think Saqib is right that the way to do it is not just create a strategy, also look into the existing business model and figure out what are the strong parts and the weaker parts of it, and where are the opportunities and where are the threats out there.
We'll just look at the time, but I think we've got time for one final question. I'm keen. David is asking about deliverables. He's very keen to find out if you can give him some advice on specific deliverables he should be including. Have you got any advice in that area?
In the business model, from a business model perspective, all deliverables are current business model, ideas on suggestions on the new business model, patterns, either patterns found in your own organization as well as relevant patterns from the outside world because of certain reasons. Then you create more than one target business model, typically more than one, and do as a real deliverable impact analysis and gap analysis. That's something that you create. There you move forward towards implementation, and then you come into the world of, for instance, TOGAF, describing a full set of deliverables, starting with creation of an enterprise architecture function, but in the real enterprise architecture cycle, the creation of a vision, which is the architectural reflection of a business model, target business model, plus a step of architecture work where you explain what you as an architect will bring to the table to re-implement this enterprise architecture vision. And going down from business architecture to information systems architecture and technology architecture. And you would all about those deliverables in the TOGAF standard that you can find on the web when you look at the Open Group website.
Well, I'm just mindful about the time, so I think this would be a good time to close today's session. I'd like to thank you as usual for your time. I'd like to thank everyone for participating in today's event. Please do keep a watchful eye on the Open Group website because we are running a series of these events over the next few months. So please do join us again. So Remco, do you have any final words?
Thank you much for organizing this, Simon, and I hope to see you all soon at one of the next webinars or a conference organized by the Open Group. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye for today. Bye-bye.